environmental assessment. Thank you. Today we're going to be discussing environmental assessments. And in other words, last week we discussed the subject of developing a mission and vision, as well as initiating the planning process, right? And so this week we're going to be discussing environmental assessment. And then because of time, because what I want to do is try to round off in an hour, 30 minutes, so that we can give 15 minutes for questions and answer. So I'm going to take just one unit, which is conducting environmental assessment. And then by the last class on Thursday, we are going to then be able to discuss unit 5, which is developing strategies, goals, and objectives, as well as the last unit, which is writing the strategic plan. Right? And so today, in trying to delve much deeply into the subject of conducting an environmental impact assessment, I'd like you to know that the learning objectives include that we understand what environmental assessment involves, perform a SWOT analysis. And interestingly, last week we did a lot around SWOTs, right? So we may not dwell extensively on that. Then explain and initiate an internal assessment, explain and initiate an external assessment. I think we also did that last week when we talked about SWOT and PESTLE, but we're going to delve more into PESTLE this time than we did last week, right? And then lastly, describe and initiate a competitive analysis. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that aspect because the other aspects we dealt with briefly and somehow extensively in the last lecture. And so that'll be the state of it as it stands. Okay, thank you. Thank you that you can hear. So that's that for that. And then we will then now, in that context of assessing the environment, an environment in this sense, please, does not mean the ecological environment or the green environment, but most importantly, environment in this context refers to the holistic environments or situation, as it were, in that sense. And so the environmental assessment, we would look at, issues around internal and external stakeholders' perception. It will help us also evaluate programs' impact on clients. It will also help us evaluate programs through a cost-benefit analysis, analyze programs and a competitive analysis, and define previous implied strategy. So that's a whole lot. And then we'll now move into competitive analysis of programs. And then in that sense, we're going to then dwell and round off the entire course for today, right? So follow me as we proceed. You remember last week that we discussed the subject of SWOT and PESTLE, right? And so this particular lecture, like I said, will dwell more on PESTLE than on SWOT. But I want you to understand that in conducting environmental assessment, it's key to understand that environmental assessment basically involves trying to have a picture of what the situation is in order to enhance decision-making. So environmental assessment is not decision-making process itself. There are tools, or it's a tool for enhancing decision-making. And in that sense, it's very important as a tool for enhancing decision-making that environmental assessment is simple. In other words, it needs to concentrate on important facts and data. So for example, right, like I used the example last week, that one of the programs we do in Youth in Motion as a nonprofit is the Democracy in Action program. And that program involved taking secondary school kids and then particularly public secondary school and allowing them observe parliamentary sittings. right? And then training them around budget making, how to become part of the policy process, the stages of the assembly and the parliamentary process, and all that constitution, section 4 of the constitution, which has to do with human rights and the likes, as well as other key aspects in that sense. So that is one key that I want us to take home with, which is the fact. Sorry, hold on. Yes. Sorry for that break. Yes. So basically, right, which is the fact that the program itself involves a lot of people, stakeholders, beneficiaries primarily are the secondary school kids, right? And then consequently, you look at stakeholders, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth, you have in it the principals, the teachers, the parents, you know, so there are a lot of stakeholders. But in all these stakeholders, the most key factor is, like I mentioned from our work, the Ministry of Education. That's one key. And then the clerk of the House of Assemblies that you want to work with. Once you get their buy-in, it is then easy to get the principals to be on board. But if you don't get those two critical buy-in, right, you cannot get the key stakeholders involved, right? So it will be foolhardy to then now start focusing on teachers and principal when the Ministry of Education, the commissioner, and the clerk of the house are the most important critical stakeholders to getting the process started. And so, in other words, it's important that in the course of environmental assessment, you focus major in majors rather than major in minor, right? So concentrate on important facts and data in important stakeholders. And then also, one thing that you must understand in the context of environmental assessment is open communication, right? There must be no secrecy, because when there's open communication about the process of the environmental assessment, it increases quality as well as trust amongst the stakeholders involved and those who are beneficiaries in that sense. And so it's very key that we understand this core important backgrounds to conducting environmental assessment. Like we said, environmental assessment tools, simple tools that help to enhance your decision-making process, not the decision-making process itself. Please take note. And we said environmental assessment is not just environment in terms of green environment, but the whole picture, right? And we're going to get a bit more into that in that sense. Now, when you want to do an environmental assessment, that is, you want to use tools for enhancing your decision-making process, there are key things you need to look at. And when you're talking about environmental assessments, like I said, it's the whole picture. And you can put it in what I call the CME framework. C stands for customers, M for markets, E for environments. And environment in this sense is the whole picture. So environmental assessment involves the customers, involves the market, and involves the entire environment. And by the entire environment, it also includes the internal and external environment. And remember last week, as a recap, we talked about the internal environment, right, which has to do more with what is going on within the company. And we talked about SWOT. SWOT is what? Strengths, weaknesses, right? Opportunities, threats. I'm going to add another T soon, but that's in the course of this conversation. Now, when it comes to the context of the external environment, you're looking at things outside the organization, right? You're looking at, competitors. You're looking at And that's where you come into the concept of pestle, most importantly, right? You're looking at trends, right? And so pestle, in that sense, remember we said last week that pestle involves P, right? Which is political. Remember that E talks about the economy. S talks about the social factors that influence. T talks about technology. L talks about the legal, or you might call the regulatory. Then E talks about the environment. And by this environment, we are now talking about green environment, changes in sustainability, the ecological environment. So remember, right, that this is quite key. Now, in this sense, remember we talked about last week, pestle, P, which talks about the political, talks about governments and, elections. How does the 2023 elections affect your business, affects the kind of projects or programs that you're going to, affects the model, the strategy for your program, affects access to funding, right? I was discussing with someone from the States yesterday who interestingly is running a project in Nigeria. And she was telling me that one of the challenges they're now facing is the fact that funders are scared of putting in money into the project because of the political environment in Nigeria, right? And so the political environment, the elections, governments, policies, and the like can affect, in that sense, your programs, whether as a nonprofit or even your pro projects or even your business, whether you're a social enterprise. Now, the point there basically is the fact that you need to take that into cognizance. Now, E talks about the economy, right? And in the context of an economy, you're looking at the everyday influx and outflux, right? For instance, how does imports, exports, how does balance of trade? How does the rise in the rise in the dollars against the naira, the gain in the dollar is against the naira? How does it affect, your programs, right? In that sense, how does it affect it? So you need to contextualize these things. For example, you might have a program and you've given out a budget for a certain sum. And then the dollar to the naira, and there's a lot of imports. When you look at the list of all that we import massively, than we export. That's a given. Everybody knows that. And so some of the things that you might need for your program or for the beneficiaries might have to be imported. And then you've put a certain figure into it, right? So you need to take this into cognizance, in that sense, in the course of developing strategic plan. Now, the S, which is the social, right, which talks about the behavior. I'm giving a recap because we've discussed this last week, but just giving a recap for those who might have missed out or those who, might need a refresher. So that's S, social, that's the behavior. Now the L, the legal, the regulatory, what are the laws? For example, right, if you're a social enterprise using technology, how does the current Startup Act that was just passed a few days ago, both at Senate and House of Reps, and if assented to by the president, how does it affect your business, right? How does it affect your social enterprise as a startup doing social good or whatever that is? Now, those are context. E, like I said, the green environment, the ecological environment in that sense. So it's important to understand this core context in that sense. Now, we're going to go a bit more, delving into this context of pestle, because you cannot do a proper environmental assessment without understanding this context, the context of pestle. And we're going to delve a bit more into it in that sense. And so whilst we do that, I want us to understand that, you see, when it comes to the concept of PESTEL, we need to understand that there is the internal environment, which is about the structure, the culture of the organization. In that sense, the shareholders, the employees, the management, right? The reward system. How do you reward, people for performance in the system? That's the internal, right? And then the external, which talks about the competitors, the suppliers, the distribution channel, right? The partners, in that sense. So it's key to understand that. Now, the context of PESTEL helps us to have a macro. When I say macro, a bigger, not a micro, but a macro understanding of the external environments, right? And by macro, I mean things that may not even directly affect the business, the program, the project, or the enterprise, right? But things that have potential for possible trends. These are key aspects in it. Now, when we then now talk about PESTEL, P, remember, policies. Let me give instances of where you need to look at when we talk about PESTEL in terms of government policies in that sense, or politics, and how that affects the frame of things. Now, the first is that you look at government policy. So when you want to get the P factor, you look at government policy, right? You look at political institutions, right? In that sense, that affect directly your program or your business or whatever it is. You look at corruption. For example, how does the perception of corruption affect your program? Do you need to put certain things in place to show extreme transparency because of the fact that the country is tainted with the perception of corruption, and you need funders to be able to buy into the project that you are doing, right? Do you need to have strong audit systems in place? What extra things do you need to do to show that even in the midst of all this corruption, your organization is at most corrupt-free? What extra miles do you need to put in place, right? Tax policies. Very important. Foreign trade, infrastructure, even the regulatory sector. All these things are under the P, which is the political. I repeat, what do you need to look at when you're looking at the political in PESTEL? P, government policy, political institutions, issues around corruption, foreign trade, tax policies, infrastructure, and the likes. Now, those are things to look at. Now, when it comes to the E factor, that's an economy, which is a key determinant of performance, because if there is a poor economy, it reduces purchasing power and it affects demand and supply. If there is a poor economy, it affects your program in the sense that it then may increase the number of people that you have to reach with your intervention, or it then needs, because of limited resources, that may necessarily mean that you have to then zoom down more systematically in getting the people that will be the most beneficial. Right? For example, if you're doing programs around poverty alleviation, economic growth, those things that you need to look at, as it affects your business or your organization or program. Economic growth, key. Exchange rates, right? International rates or situations, right? Things that you need to look at. You need to look at what is the current purchasing power right, of those that are your key beneficiaries or the users of your product or services. It is very important to bring this into cognizance. And so that's why I tell people running an organization or, a project is not child's play. But our business here is to make these things simple so that you know those things to look out for and be most productive in that which you are about to set out to do. Now, when it comes to social, we say social is behavioral. What is the behavior of the population in context to either your intervention or your business or the kind of value that you want to bring in on board? It's very important. A lot of times, for example, in the non-profit space, there's a cause for assumption. We assume that people must behave in a certain way or they need certain things. So a friend of mine gave me an example where they went to a particular community and they took a lot of, clothes and, wares and the likes, clean some of them designers and clothes that they've gotten from people. And they were trying to share it to the community. And, as people were going there to get what they said they had brought, people were grumbling. And these are designer dresses that, they felt like, but their problem is not even clothing per se. Their problem is that they want to be productive. They want to have skills that will make them to be able to put food on the table, right? That's a challenge with the young people there. And so they felt like these people are not even grateful that we had to get clothes and the likes for them. But assumption is the basest form of knowledge. And so it's important to understand what is the popular behavior, expectation, perception of the beneficiaries, of the customers, right? And so it's key to understand it. What is the population growth rates? That's also key issue under social. Population growth rate. What is age distribution? Please note that these things may not apply to your particular program, projects, or value or business, but take the ones that apply, right? That's the context of it. Create a tabular, a table form around it, and use those tabular to fit it in. And with competitive analysis, I'm going to give an example of how you do those tabulars because it is simple. You don't need much story and all that. Just do the tabular before you actually do the writing of your strategic plan. Do the tabular in tabular form. Very easy. Now, in terms of social, you're looking at age distribution. You're looking at income levels. You're looking at career, health, right, of those involved. You're looking at culture, the way of life. You're looking at issues around even, local workforce within the community or, the value system you're trying to provide. So if, for example, you're trying to do projects that involve a certain kind of people that maybe they are farmers, you need to put that into cognizance. You need to, for example, if you're trying to add value and the customer are people that are, within the working class, income earning population, you need to put that into cognizance. Key, right? Now, in terms of tech, you're looking at innovations, right? Examples, things to look at, innovations. You're looking at things around, regulations that affect innovations or surrounds the area that you're trying to solve. For example, in Nigeria, I talked about the Startup Act. How does it affect you, for example, if you're a social enterprise using technology to solve a problem, right? Or to add value. You're looking at level of innovation. You're looking at automation. You're even looking at the level of research and development activity and how that affects, so for example, you're doing programs in the agricultural sector and you are not in tune with what the trends are with development in IITA, right? that can be a challenge, right? And so you are in the agricultural business and you're not in tune with developments or things that are going on in that space. For example, in IIT or other places where research in that business model or in that particular project is carried on, that's very catastrophic, right? You are looking at technological change awareness. So for example, how you add value or how you do a program in 1997 will be different from how, right? Because of the levels of technological changes. You need to be abreast of this under the tech, right? Very key. Because the level of technological change or awareness is key because with technology, right, you can either reduce, you can outsource, whether you are capable to leverage the technology, whether you need to outsource, whether you need some more training for your staff in a particular technology, you will know whether to do it. You can even save yourself money, right, by so doing. So for example, when we want to do a project called the Youth in Motion Fellowship, right? We've been doing projects basically in Nigeria, but we wanted, during the COVID era, it was not possible to do it physically. So we now thought, okay, let's leverage Zoom and other platforms. But then we now thought of the fact that, okay, we can take it across Africa, right? And so we did it across Africa. 33 countries across Africa were represented in trying to train people who are activists to become policy influencers, because it's a different ball game. You can be an activist mobilizing for change, people, but how do you then mobilize for policy changes at the bigger level, at the macro level? So interestingly, that was how technology helped us scale the 4 weeks program, beyond just Nigeria. And so it's as simple as that. You need to start looking at those things, right? So environments, right? Environment is a key part. We talk about environment in this sense under PESTEL. We mean the ecological environment. We mean weather, we mean climates, in that sense. And this is important because, you see, environment can affect access to raw materials, right? And so it's important to take some of these things into cognizance if it concerns the area that you are in. For instance, you're doing project in the agricultural sector. Even environment is a key area to consider. For example, you are doing program and then you did not check weather forecasts and you fix the dates, whereas rain is predicted to fall on that day. As simple as that, right, can cause catastrophe to the progress of your program. And I see that a lot of us sometimes don't even do those things, so it's important to take in that, as simple as it might sound, right? So it's important. Now, legal, which basically you're looking at issues around, for example, discrimination laws, antitrusts, employment laws, right? You're looking at issues around consumer protection. What protection is offered those who are consumers of your products? What protection? You're doing a business in the herbal industry. What protection are offered those who are users of your product? What particular agencies do you need approvals from? Legal. What is the projection of what the legal situation will be? How do you key into that? Intellectual property, IP. You're talking of intellectual property, copyright, patents, trademark, and for the sake of those who may not understand the difference, trademark, really trade, the mark of your trade, right? So Yali Network is a trademark. American Corner can also be a trademark of a particular organization, maybe the US embassies, right? Or the US government. In that sense, so trade, mark of your trade. Copyright, right to copy. Now, when you put things together, maybe intellectual work, musical work, choreographic work, whatever, people must get a right to copyright, right? And then you now talk about patents, right? It has to do with inventions, right? And so basically you invent something, patent. Even for software, you actually use copyright. You can copyright software. So those are contexts that you need to know in operating in that space, right? Very, very key, very, very key considerations that you need to put in place in order to position yourself for strategic planning, right? And so we're going to then move into something called competitive analysis. But before we go into competitive analysis, I want to stretch the issue of PESTEL a bit further, right? And in doing so, what you're trying to do with PESTEL is get data, get information. And like we mentioned, environmental assessment is a tool for enhancing decision-making, not decision-making process. And we need to keep it simple. And by keeping it simple, you need to concentrate on important facts and data. And how can you concentrate? How do you get data? Facts. So I'm going to touch a bit where you can get data and facts, for example, right? So that when you're looking for these things, you know where, interestingly, you can get data and facts from Google. Yes, Google is your best friend. Sometimes you might get data from asking the right questions from the right people, whether in the industry or who understands the industry as well. Sometimes, for example, you may have to pay for it, right? So for example, I know that a lot of people may not know that you can actually get some data from the National Bureau of Statistics, and it's online. The National Bureau of Statistics can provide you the needed important data that you might need. National Bureau of Statistics. You can also look at information provided by the Big Four. The Big Four in Nigeria, consulting firms. You talk of Philip Consulting, you talk of Ernst & Young, you talk of Deloitte and the like. So the consulting aspects, right? In that sense, the publications that they make, you talk of McKinsey, the information that they provide can be very useful for you to be able to chart your course. And that's why they say readers are leaders. There's a reason. Because if a person as a leader, your role is more of a strategic role from a place of self-awareness of yourself, of the organization, right? And then you play a strategic role by arming yourself with those key facts and that can help grow the program, the organization as well. So basically it's key. Now, even in terms of programs for nonprofits, some of these consulting firms will provide you contexts. You can get data and facts from trends, that are happening, programs happening in other parts of the world, and how they've customized those programs to solve problems. There's nothing new under the sun. It is application and peculiarity to that environment that is new. And so it's important that we understand this. And it's important that, look, in the course of conducting PESTEL, you try to ensure that you use it to map out opportunities and threats. As well as some people ask me, how often should you? You can do it every 6 months. That's also very fine, right? And so I think we've exhausted the subject matter of PESTEL. But for time, because I have short time, I want to ensure that we delve deep into this one singular unit and then exhaust it. And then we can ask questions so that we can round off much earlier, right? And so that is key, that we understand these things. Now, let's move into the concept of competitive analysis. Now, we talked about PESTEL helps us to do what? Macro analysis, the big picture. Competitive analysis, on the other hand, helps us to zoom in to that which directly influence or impacts on the particular organization in that sense, or the programs or the value that the organization does. It helps us to really identify, build decision-making process. It helps us to identify the weaknesses. It helps us to identify opportunities better. And it helps you as an organization or a program to stand out. And that's why competitive analysis is important, whether in the nonprofit or for-profit social enterprise space, right? So basically, it is basically helping to do what? Identify, one, then evaluate strategies to determine productivity. Very key. And so in doing a competitive analysis, it's important to understand what is the current strategy of the competitors. As a nonprofit, look, they are competitors. You are competing for beneficiaries to impact. Although you are doing good, all doing good, but you're competing. You're competing for funding, because when a call for funding comes out from, example, the US Embassy or consulate, you basically, in the US Embassy in the North, the consulate for the South, you basically are competing with 1,001 other organizations for that same funding. So even though you are doing good, you are still competing. So competitive analysis is key. So you need to understand what is the current strategy of the competitors, right? That's one key thing. Two, what are the objectives? Now, after you've identified who are the competitors in that approaches, but your end goal is, for example, you are in, you're doing something in the educational sector, right? And then your end goal is secondary school, getting girls who are out of school back in school. The other person's end goal might be equipping teachers, in order to be able to impact knowledge to the kids or peoples or students. And so, but you're all in the educational sector. So they might be direct or indirect competitors in that sense, right? Competition being a good word now. So you need to understand what are the objectives, right? What are the capabilities of the organization, the competitor? What are the basic assumptions that the competition works on? Some of these things you can get on their website. Some of these things you can get, by trying to put your ears down to understand what their model is and observing. Because you can put one thing on the website and it's a different approach. So you need to have a keen sense of observation in that sense. Now, one of the first things in competitive analysis that you need to put into cognizance, right, is, remember we talked about you must understand the current strategy, objectives, the capabilities, and lastly, the assumptions of the organization. But breaking it down much more further, you need to look at the first. How is the competition positioned in the market? And by that, I simply mean that what is the basis for the competitive advantage? What stands, competitive advantage is basically what stands you out, whether in terms of value or pricing, right? Is it that the pricing is cheaper or the value is much more, or they've developed certain niche market, or they've been around for a while? So you need to understand in the context of how is competition positioned in the market. You need to understand first sub is what is the basis for competitive advantage, right? And I've mentioned a few of them. Two, under this system, you need to understand what kind of investments is the competition making. Investment is the competition making. In that context, you might be looking at what is the investment in infrastructure, right? In terms of what is their investment in terms of resources and board. You need to look at that. Another thing you need to look at here is that in the sense of how much are they meeting objectives? Remember we talked about, so current strategy, how is the competition positioned in the market, right? So how much are they meeting the objectives? You need to understand that. You need to understand how much the organization is meeting its objectives, because you need to look at, for example, the website. What are the objectives of the organization? Or find out what the objective is this company meeting the objective? Is this organization, is their projects meeting the objectives for the beneficiaries, right? You need to understand that, because when you understand whether they are meeting objectives or not, you know whether they are going to continue in that strategy or they're going to change strategy. Very important, right? Very key. Now, you need to also understand, in terms of future assumptions, you need to understand what are the basic assumptions at the moment that they're operating with. Has that assumption worked for them? If it has not worked for them, right, what are the possible changes in assumptions? Or what are the assumptions that you need to start? These assumptions you are more able to know whether they are meeting specific goals and objectives, right? And so it's quite very important. Now, B2B, that's business to business, or B2C, business to client. So
let's be patient.
hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I think the rain is affecting the network. Anytime rain falls in case of what you order versus what you get. Okay. All right, sir. Thank you. So let me try to share back the screen. Okay. So basically, right? I don't know. Please, can someone help type in where what last you heard, or where we stopped before the internet decided to show that it has a mind of its own, so that we can proceed from there. Thank you. You can just type it in. Thank you. Okay, fantastic. B2B. Okay, good. So basically, right, you can have B2B, right? And I'm coming. I think did I share the screen again? Let me share again. So you can have B2B, and then you can have organizations that are B2C. B2B being that you're talking about organizations. B2B has to do with organizations that are business to business. They provide value or beneficiaries that are organizational driven. In that sense, let me off my video so that we can pick the nitty-gritties properly without obstruction. Now, then we now talk about B2C, business to client, or business or project to beneficiaries, right? So B2B, in that sense, could be, in terms of programs, for example, you might be doing projects that are focused not on direct beneficiaries, but are focused on, for example, the ministries or the teaching, the quality of teachers' impact in terms of quality of methodology, right? These are not They are beneficiaries, but not as direct. But your end goal is the students, not for the teachers to have this thing and go and sleep with them, or to have this knowledge and just vanish into oblivion. No, the real goal is to impact on the students. That's the real goal. But they are the means to that end, right? And so in that context, you can then also look at B2C, direct to beneficiaries, or direct to clients or customers. And so it's important that you put that into cognizance when you are doing your personal analysis, as well as your competitive analysis in that sense, right? Very key, very important, very important, very important, very key. So let's now go a bit further into this context of PESTLE, in the sense that, when you're trying to do this analysis, you need to understand the fact that you do your PESTLE analysis, you do your SWOT analysis. Those are key tools that you can use for both internal and external assessments, right? Now, let's go a bit into SWOT. Now, SWOT, as we know, we talk about, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And I promised I was going to add another T. So we have SWOT, that's the T raised to power 2. So we have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then trends. Right? Now, why trends? Because you see, when we talk about SWOT, most times people think that SWOT is only for internal analysis, and that's not true. Because you see, SWOT can help you also to access the trends in terms of your competitors, yourself and your competitors. What is their strength? What is their weakness? What's their opportunity? What do you think are their threats, right? And then trends. Because with trends, you can then look at outward. It creates in your mind that you need to look beyond just inward into outwards, right? So it's quite important. So for example, if the trend during COVID-19 was for people to do a lot of Zoom, and you're doing a project and you're still struggling with, for instance, during the COVID era, a lot of schools were closed, but they were holding organizational, educational content creation and sharing online. Some schools have to start using Zoom, so that they can also get money from the parents as well, in that sense. So they were using Zoom to run classes, and all that. Now, if you wanted to impact knowledge to teachers, you are doing a program, you've always done a program that impact knowledge to teachers, and you've always converted them physically. What do you think that trend tells you? That trend tells you that you need to then perhaps start looking at perhaps adding some digital skills into your program in how you impact your teachers or the beneficiaries of your program in that sense, right? So trends can also affect how the impact of your program, the process of the impact of your program goes. Key. Let me give an example which we know quite often, which is self-driving cars, right? As self-driving cars are not a thing here, but then, severally. I remember the day that we're traveling last year. I was in a wedding. My friend was doing a wedding in Georgia, so I had to travel for it. And then I traveled from Chicago to Georgia, because I traveled first to Chicago. I flew in from Nigeria to Chicago, then from Chicago to Georgia. And then, in the course of the going, I saw first time Tesla car that was driving, and the driver was just pushing, and enjoying himself whilst the car was just maneuvering. It was a good feel though. So the point there is that now the impact of that kind of innovation, just imagine that impact, what it will have on the insurance company, that run insurance for cars, what impact will it have in terms of the way the company, you may not connect it. That was a connection between insurance and self-driving cars, but there's a connection because the policies might need to change. The approach to the policies might change. And so was self-driving. And you may not connect it directly. But when you understand the trends to look out for, you tend to then be able to understand how that impacts your industry in that sense. And so that's very key. So in doing your competitive analysis, you do the pestle and SWOT, but most importantly also you look, where do you look at? I want to point you to the areas you need to look at. You look at the company profile, right? In terms of the company profile, you look at market information, right? You look at maybe product information, which includes, things like driving, pricing, distribution, and the likes, right? The kind of service that is being provided, right? Then you also look at, in terms of market share, you look at the marketing strategy, right? You look at what approach do they use towards advertising. That you can also, some people use Google for advertising and the likes. So those are core issues that you look at. But I want to round off, more importantly, the next few minutes with a dwelling on example of how to conduct a competitive analysis that works, right? Can we see this, please? If you can see, just let me know. Yes, we can. If you can see this, let me know that you can. Just type in, please. You can see the competitive analysis example. Okay, great. Thank you. I want you to just take, okay, thank you so much. I want you to take some time to look at this. Look at this, right? Let me run it a bit more. I want you to take some time to look at this, right? Just look at it, and then we'll go. Let's take 3 minutes to look at it, and then we're then going to go. This is simple. It's nothing elaborate, nothing too complex. Simple, but you achieve your goal. We have 1 minute more, and then I can go into a fourth.
Hi, Timmy. What I'm seeing on my own screen is conducting an environmental assessment. not the exercise.
Oh, okay. That's what you are saying. Is that what everyone is
So,
saying as well?
Yes, that's what everybody is saying.
Oh, thank you for for bringing out that.
Page 14.
Oh, no. That's okay. Let me stop sharing. Let me stop sharing and yes, let me stop sharing and see if, okay. Thank you, sir, for bringing that to notice. Okay. Can you see competitive analysis example now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So please just look at it. Let's use 2 minutes to look at it, and then I'll come back. 3 minutes. I want us to carefully look at it and reflect on it, because it's important in the context of what we've shared, right? And look at how simple it is, and then use that, in the next 2 minutes plus thereabouts. Then I'm going to do an explanation, and then we'll round off, and then we'll. Yeah. Okay, I think we should have done that by now. Thank you so much. And so, consequently, in this regard, right, you see that in organizing competitive analysis, you can see company profile, right? Key competitive advantage, target markets, market share, marketing strategy, product and services, pricing, distribution channels, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, trends. Now, when you look at this, under company highlights, right? Yeah. You're talking about two things: company profile, key competitive advantage. You understand what key competitive advantage is? Basically, what stands you out in terms of the value, or in terms of pricing, or in terms of process, those things. So company highlights. Now, market information, you're looking at three key things: target market, market share, marketing strategy, right? Then product information, we're looking at three key things as well. That's products and prices and services, pricing, distribution channel, right? Then under SWOT, that's a SWOT with a T raised to power 2, you have strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and trends, right? So that's that for that. If you are also doing a pestle analysis, this is how simple you make it, nothing complex. On that, you put your pestle arranged, right, like this. Then you create mini boxes of the key areas on that pestle that you want to mention, which I mentioned earlier. For example, when you're talking about issues around, political in pestle, you're talking of government policy, issues on corruption, tax policy, infrastructure, and the likes. You're looking at the issue of economy. You look at economic growth, exchange rates, and things like that. So that's those that are important to you. So it's not a complex thing at all. It is from here, then you can now develop a more robust strategic plan by writing it out in a more explanatory way that, you can understand, right? So in this sense, now, let's now look at under company highlights, company profile. This is you, your company, or your program or projects, or whatever it is. And this is the competitor 1. So you can have as more competitors, right? Competitor 1, competitor 2, competitor 3, as much as you want to consider within a minimum. It is not extensive, right? Direct, indirect competitors that directly have something to do with the area you are impacting in, or the area that you're trying to solve a problem or add value in. And so you see this. This is you. This is the competitor. Now, company highlights under that company profile. You, for example, when did you can tabularize. I want us to do this exercise together. Put let's draw it out. Draw something out. For those who run maybe a non-profit or social enterprise, let's take our pen and draw it out. Draw out these things. Then just this way, I give us another maybe 2 minutes to do that. Draw it out, and then let's fill it together whilst I explain, so you fill yours, right, as much as you can. Okay, quickly, let's get into it because of time. Now, you can see company profile. Founded, when was your organization founded, right? When was the organization founded? This case, founded in 2009. And you get, what does it do? Offers technical training. That's what do you do? Or what does the organization do? What programs are you trying to run? Revenue from ads, right? That's it. The competitor, founded 1998, so they've been around for a while. That's also that may be a key point to note. They offer training to people who want to learn, right? So they offer a broad spectrum of training, right? But the organization in context offers technical training. So for example, as a nonprofit, right? You may, offer, maybe in the educational sector, you may offer maybe digital skills training for teachers, in that sector. And then somebody else may be offering, providing volunteers to go train students directly on digital skills, right? So both of you are trying to do what? Impact on the quality of digital skills that you have in the educational sector, but with different approaches. Is that clear? Right? So that's that. Key competitive advantage. What stands you out? As an organization, what do you think stands you out? The competitors, in this sense, huge organic reach. They have over 2 million visitors per minute. They have a vast toolkit already in place. Over 1,600 pieces of content, right? Can see, very specific, not anything ambiguous. Then you now move to market information, right? The target market. What's your target in the context of nonprofit? What's your target beneficiary, right? So in this context, there are professionals who want to get ahead technically, age 23 to 40, but who don't have a degree, right? That's why you see technical. Then this professional want to get ahead technically, age 23, 40, who also don't have a degree. Can you see that the target market similar, but the approaches, let's see, market share, they have 3% of the market. Competitor has approximately 15% of the market, right? In terms of program, you might look at program share or impact share, right? You are focused on impacting maybe 1%. Say you're focused on impacting teachers. So, that's how many percent are you looking at impacting and all that? And then what is the competitor doing? So marketing strategy. Theirs is organic. For instance, you're doing a program. What is the strategy in which you are trying to drive awareness about the program? So marketing strategy can be awareness strategy as well, right? So theirs is organic only, 10K per minute, plus Facebook ads, right? So if you're a program, what is your program, what's it called? Awareness strategy, right? Or what's the competitor's awareness strategy? How do people get to know what they do? What are the people that need to know what they do? Is it the media? Is it funders? Those things. Because some people's awareness strategy might be focused on more beneficiaries knowing so that more people can be part of the program. But your own strategy might be wanting to let funders and stakeholders know what you're doing. So what is your strategy? The competitor here for this one is huge organic traffic only, do around 2 million visitors per month. So they added ads to their own. They are hugely organic. And you can understand, they've been around since 1998, right? So, and then under pricing, under product and service, that's product information, product and service, you look at courses paid for one by one. They do a subscription model, right? And in this sense, their pricing is $20 per course. The subscription is $12 per month, right? Distribution channel, direct and carefully chosen affiliates, right? That's how, so in this case, you can say stakeholders channel, For example, if you're looking at stakeholder, like I mentioned, the Youth in Motion program, right? We're looking at stakeholder channel. How do you get to Ministry of Education, the House of Assembly clerk? Those are, those are key stakeholder channels, For others, there might be, maybe principals and all that. So you need to know strengths. We know what that is, but in that sense, we are looking at quality of the product delivered by domain experts who keep the content up to date, right? That's their own. Then for competitors, is huge organic traffic plus breadth of courses offered. That's a wide range of courses offered, right? That's their strength. Weaknesses, they don't have enough content because it's just a few. And that also can be, weakness does not necessarily mean you have to change strategy. It may also mean that that's your approach, right? That weakness can be an approach because they are focused on technical training. They cannot afford to do a lot of content out in that sense. Theirs is more expensive. Theirs is direct payment. So it must be quality, deep-rooted content, so not enough content. But in terms of the weakness of competitor, keeping old content up to date is costly. Their community requires employees to manage, so they are not ample, they're not agile, which is the challenge with big organizations, really, And so you can tap into that weakness and use that to your advantage in terms of how you position, right? How you map, how it maps, how you take advantage of opportunities or possible threats. Now, in terms of opportunities, build a community that self-manage itself, have a recruitment drive to get more experts. You see? You can see this is like, they can do that because if you look off the chief of the competitors, they have a challenge with this. But, because their content is manageable, you can build a community and then recruit drive to get more expert, then offer 2 pricing model, monthly and cost by cost. So that's the opportunity. Sometimes you help the competitors anticipate what the opportunities are, because that gives you some sense of being ahead of, when we talk about objectives, right, goals, assumptions. If the assumption is not working, what are the possible areas that they might, what assumptions would they change? What possible strategies would they change? So you already anticipate that, look, this model may not be working, this is not working for them. So they are possible to change strategy towards this direction. You know how to anticipate and get those things on your side early on before they do, right? Now, threats. A big company, LinkedIn could move into the space and make it difficult to compete, right? You're projecting to the future. A more fun solution, or solution with easier digest content to capture the customer base. Now, you're helping the competitors to anticipate threats, but in doing that, you can see that you might be able to incorporate quickly before the competitor sees it, that into your own model, right? So trends for you, online learning at your own pace, learning that lasts an entire career, those are the future trends, or what are the trends that the customers or beneficiaries need at that point in time. So these are core contexts that you need to look at in the context of your competitive analysis in that sense. So that comes to the end of our conversation today about conducting an environmental assessment. For time, we'll take questions, and so that we can just maybe for 15, 20 minutes so that we can round off much earlier. Next week, next class, that's Thursday, which is the last one. I implore you to also get people to come attend the last one because, it's going to be power-packed with 2 weeks, developing strategies, goals, and objectives, an extensive, and then we're going to round off with, writing the strategic plan itself. Thank you so much, and over to you, sir, Mr. Idayo. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes, we're back.
Over to you, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for Timmy. All right, it's time for Q&A. Let me quickly check to see if we have any question. Now, somebody's asking, can we have access to the slide? Yes. If you registered properly, you will have access to all the slides. How can you see your competitors' info like you are showing? That's a question to you. Timmy? Hi, Timmy. I think we've lost him. Hello. Please, let's be patient with him.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you now, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So how can you see your competitors' information like you were showing during the presentation? Can you hear me?
Yes, hello, I've changed my internet again. All right.
So
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Let's take these 3 questions in a row. Number 1.
Okay, sir.
How can you see your competitors' information like you were showing in your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Number 2, is environmental assessment similar to environmental scan? And then number 3, adding trends to SWOT analysis raises a question about where do we place future forecasts in SWOT analysis? So those are the 3 questions before we go to Ikeja and Port Harcourt.
Okay. Thank you. So first question, in terms of that sense, let me do my video so that the internet will not. So in terms of that question, you can look at the company's websites, right? You can look at the company's website, you can look at materials that you can lay your hands on that you know, nowadays, you can actually get a lot from the website, the social media pages of the organization, you know, discussing with people that have a perception of what the organization is in that sense, social media pages and the likes. And from there, you might be able to, you can also look at some of the reports that have been written about the organization, right? And in that sense also so a lot of archival research, right? And internet-based research can be very helpful in distilling that information. But also a lot of conversation can help you distill the information you need with the right people, as well as observation. So those are the key ways that you can be able to get those kind of information in that sense, as much as you can. Now, the second question, that there's when it comes to environmental scanning, environmental assessment, they are all birds of the same feather. It's the same thing, except that, you know, it's just semantics. Scanning has to do with, you know, observation, observing critically, right? Whereas assessment has to do with judging. So you can scan a panel, but you might not assess them, you know? So it's just, but assessment seems, as a word, seems more of a predictive impact on the action before it even becomes obvious, right? Why scanning has to do with mostly surveys and, you know, intentional data that you can use to identify opportunities and threats, but they are one and the same. So it's semantics. Then the last question on future trends, right? Future trends or so, and SWOT, yeah? So basically, all that you're trying to do is to look at the present and the future. And as you can see from the example that we gave, there are places where, you know, you projected for the competitors as well as for yourself. So future forecasting basically is a key part of SWOT already, because for SWOT, you're looking at the present and the future, in that sense. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll go straight to Ikeja. Please unmute yourself. And then Port Harcourt.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir, for breaking down the competitive analysis. Okay, my question is, does this apply to non-profit organizations? And I'm asking this question because anywhere we go to, I'm on SDG 17, partnership and collaboration. Don't see yourself as competitors, see yourself as collaborators. Now I have my vision, I have my mission, I have what I want to achieve for my NGO. I'm not a social enterprise. Am I supposed to be learning from other NGOs, or am I supposed to be striving to be better than them by checking what they are doing in order to be better than them? For instance, we have people getting grants and donations and all because of the activities they are doing in their NGOs. But that is not my vision. Should I say because they are running such programs, doing some things, I should go into it because I want to move forward. I want to get grants and donations. And I'm asking this question because this training will step it down for people.
I think we've gotten the question. We've gotten the question.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Let's quickly move to Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt.
Good morning. I noticed from the slide that there was no competitive advantage from the company that started in 2000. And that's like the 2000 for a company that started in 2000 and to a company that is in 1998. That's a huge gap. So I'm asking, was it intentional? Like, do we have new companies that do not have, like, is it intentional that there was no competitive advantage for a newer company, or like new companies have competitive advantage for companies that are longer?
Thank you very much. And finally, Uyo. Will you please unmute yourself? Go ahead, Huyo.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Inyaba Odejimi. They're hearing me. Yes. Okay, I'm so grateful on this teaching on impact assessments, because before I used to think that until when you're about to start your organization is when you do impact assessment. But from this training, I know that while you are your organization is going on, you can do reassess the environment. And I've realized that the opportunity given here, that building a community that self and manage itself, and also also have a recruitment drive to get more experts, or in case of in a situation of maybe academic setting, maybe a school, you will be able to do a drive and get more peoples. And I think that this opportunity could could help in the traits. If we apply this opportunity, it will help us in the traits. So I want to find out what are other ways of handling the traits, because this particular opportunity, as we've stated here, could help us in the trait that we experience within our organization and our competitors. Thank you.
Over to you, Timmy.
I don't think I got the last question so well, but madam, you made some key points, though. And then I would just want to quickly say that in order to identify the opportunities in the threats, you understand the industry better, and you have to put in the work to, identify those things, basically. And sometimes you can do that by speaking with those in the industry, and as well as speaking with those who you consider experts in that space that you're in. For example, if you talked about the educational sector, you might also speak with the beneficiaries as well. They might be able to give you insights into some of these things, how the threats, the opportunities you can identify in the threats, but you need to put in the work to get that done in that sense. I cannot just give you 1, 2, 3, 4, it may not be contextually relevant to you in that sense. And that's the challenge with copy and paste approach. You need to really put in the work to get what you need in that sense. Thank you so much. Now, the first question was as regards non-profits. Yes, this is applicable. If you see the examples that we gave, we somehow brought in non-profit to the picture. But I think it's a semantic issue. So let's replace competitive analysis with, say, collaborative analysis, right? Does that help? And then use the same model to be able to identify these things so that you can also identify partners. When you identify the threats, the opportunities, you can also identify them as partners and reach out to them to say, oh, I think we can do this and this together because this is what I've identified as a threat, right? And so see it more as a collaborative analysis, whatever name you might want to call the approach. Then secondly, is the fact that the last question, I think, is around competitive advantage, whether, the fact that the organization had been around for a while, longer than the other organization. The point that an organization has been in existence longer than the other does not necessarily mean that they have a competitive advantage over the other. It can be longer, might be a problem, and it can be the gateway to a solution. It depends on how the organization sees it. And so what the collaborative analysis or competitive analysis, anyone that suits you, does is that it helps you to anticipate these things and then see it from the other person's perspective, whether in order to help you reach out to them for collaboration, or if it's a business, try to take advantage of it to get things done, right? So in that sense, the length of time is not a competition. So let me give examples. For example, how many people remember the days of BlackBerry? BlackBerry has been way longer than, the current model of Android and all that, but then they're out of the market, right? So let's give another example in the business of, picture taking, looking good and content. Let's take Kodak. Kodak has been in the business for quite a long time, but when, certain trends emerged and they didn't anticipate those trends, look at what happened to them. Look at Nokia, for example, as a phone. The Nigerian market has been saturated by other brands like Tecno, Infinix, and the likes. But Nokia was the, when you say the great grandfathers. So the length of time in, the fact that they have been around for a long time does not necessarily mean that they have a competitive advantage. It is how it is used. And so in that context, the fact that they've been around for a length of time also can be an advantage to you as a non-profit. For example, you might be able to directly approach them for possibilities for partnership, right? So, because what you are bringing on board may be different from the approach they are using. For example, this whole program we're having is a partnership between American Corner, the U.S. Consulate, and AC and other stakeholders involved. So basically, These are core areas. You look at, oh, these persons have a strength. American scholars have a strength in the quality of people that need this kind of thing. AC has a strength in training, advocacy. So that's how to get it done in that context. I hope that helps in answering the question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other question? Please indicate by raising up your hand. I can't see any other question here. And there's no one raising the hand.
No, sir.
Please always raise your hand so that we know what we are. Yes, go ahead, Port Harcourt.
Sir, the question was on the slide. I noticed that the competitive advantage for that company was missing for competitor one. I was asking if it's intentional, like that company for that's was it intentional? Does the company competitor one does not have like an advantage?
Okay, I get that. Yes, so competitor one could not figure out what their competitive advantage is yet, and it's not a bad idea. Thank you. If you cannot answer, the intentionality of why I even chose that example is the fact that sometimes you may not be able to answer all that question, right? But it's not a bad thing in itself. It's a process. So you can always identify the answers as you evolve in that process of developing your collaborative analysis or your competitive analysis. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very, very much. I think we have to wrap up as we earlier said. Okay, there's one question from the American Center here. Please just hold on. Okay. Alain Kunle said, we will appreciate if we can have the copy of the chart on the competitive analysis. Team, they would like to have that chart.
Yes,
I think
sir.
you'll give
No,
it to it. Yes.
Oh, on the chart. Okay, let me share that on the chart right away. Thank you.
No, they would like to have it. Shuba will collect it from you if you can.
Okay, sir. All right, sir. Okay, sir. Not a problem.
Do you have any final word?
Well, basically, it's just that next week, next session, which is Thursday, 11 to 1, is going to be the last one, and it will be the icing on the cake. So you won't want to miss that. Thank you for your patience and being part of it. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Timmy. Can we put our hands together again for him? Everybody, let's clap for him. Port Harcourt is not clapping. I'm watching all of you. Yeah. Lekki, you are not clapping very well. I didn't say you should wave your hand. I say clap. All right, thank you very much. Let me say this again. The U.S. consulate is determined to empower Nigerians. And this is one of the ways we're doing so. Please, let's invite other people. I know you know people that can benefit from this program. So let's inform them. This program runs till January. And I can assure you, if you're able to go through them, they will not only transform you, they will transform your organization. No matter the type of organization, they will transform your organization. Once again, we thank Timmy, and we look forward to the last session on Thursday. Please keep a date with us. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.